The perfect family. In the quiet suburbs of Chulwota, Florida, stood the Amato family home. Peaceful, surrounded by whispering trees and the distant hum of crickets. Inside lived Chad and Margaret Amato, a devoted couple in their 60s, who had built a life rooted in discipline and love. Chad was a respected nurse anesthetist, organized and proud. Margaret was gentle and nurturing, the heart of the home. Their sons, Cody and Grant, completed the picture. Cody was the achiever, responsible, hardworking, steady. Grant, the younger, was intelligent but restless, often lost in dreams bigger than his reality. To neighbors, they looked like the perfect American family, well-educated, close-knit, and secure. But under that calm, something was beginning to rot. The fall from grace. Grant's struggles began quietly. After finishing nursing school, he followed his family's path into healthcare. But the pressures of the job, the expectations, and his own insecurities began to eat at him. In 2018, everything fell apart. Grant was accused of stealing medication, powerful sedatives meant for patients. He was suspended and then fired. The shame was unbearable. His parents tried to help, urging him to start over, but Grant withdrew deeper into himself. He spent long hours locked in his room, staring at a glowing screen that would soon become his entire world. That's where he met her. The obsession. It started late one night on an adult cam site called Cam Girls TV. The woman's name was Sylvie, a model from Bulgaria with bright blonde hair and pale blue eyes. To most, she was a performer. To Grant, she was salvation. She smiled when he messaged her, laughed at his jokes, and called him baby. Every time he sent her money, she responded with affection. The dopamine hit was instant, powerful, intoxicating. What began as curiosity became obsession. He convinced himself that what they shared was real, that Sylvie cared for him, that their bond was more than money. But it was money that kept it alive. Within months, Grant spent thousands on her. When his savings vanished, he maxed out credit cards. When that wasn't enough, he stole $60,000 from his brother Cody's account. Sylvie kept smiling. Grant kept paying. Family intervention. As 2018 dragged on, the Amato home turned into a battlefield. Chad and Margaret discovered the financial chaos and demanded answers. Cody confronted Grant, furious at the betrayal. Grant, cornered, insisted Sylvie loved him. "She's not just some girl online," he told them. "She's my girlfriend." His family tried to make him see reason, but he was too far gone. They cut him off, sent him to rehab, took his phone, locked down the Wi-Fi. For most families, that might have been the turning point, the moment everything healed. But for the Amatos, it was the moment the countdown began. Grant's obsession wasn't an addiction anymore. It was identity. And when that identity was threatened, something inside him broke. The breaking point. After rehab, Grant came home under strict rules. No internet, no contact with Sylvie, no excuses. His parents watched him closely. Cody still tried to help, even after being robbed, paying Grant's debts, offering him another chance. But the tension was unbearable. Chad and Margaret were tired. They told Grant that if he couldn't follow the rules, he'd have to leave for good. Grant agreed quietly. That silence was the calm before a storm. He knew what he was going to do. He'd already lost his career, his money, and now, the only fantasy that made him feel loved. To him, the enemy wasn't Sylvie, it was his family. The murders. On the night of January 24, 2019, the Amato home was quiet. Chad sat in the living room. Margaret was cleaning up after dinner. Cody, always the last to arrive home, walked through the door in his scrubs, exhausted from a long shift. Upstairs, Grant waited. No one knows exactly how long he sat there or what thoughts ran through his mind. But sometime around midnight, 3 shots shattered the silence. By morning, the Amato family was dead. The Discovery Police arrived the next day after Cody didn't show up for work. Inside, they found a scene of horror. Margaret lay face down near the entryway. Chad was slumped in the kitchen. Cody's body was discovered in his bedroom, shot once in the face. Each had been killed execution style. There were no signs of forced entry, no sign of struggle. The family's guns were missing, and Grant was gone. The capture. For 24 hours, the town of Chuluota was gripped by fear. Then came a break. Surveillance footage showed Grant's car outside a DoubleTree hotel in Orlando. When officers entered the lobby, they saw him sitting calmly, alone, scrolling through his phone. He wasn't hiding. He wasn't running. He was waiting. When detectives approached, he looked up and asked almost politely, "Is my family okay?" The question sent a chill down their spines. It wasn't concern. It was performance. The interrogation. At the sheriff's office, detectives interrogated him for hours. Grant denied everything. He claimed he'd left the house the night before and returned to find his family dead. But the evidence told another story. Gunshot residue on his hands, security footage showing his car at the scene, his fingerprints on spent shell casings, and worst of all, internet records showing that just hours after the murders, Grant had logged into his computer and tried to message Sylvie again. His first instinct after killing his family wasn't to flee or to grieve. It was to reconnect with the woman who didn't even know his real name. Inside his mind, as detectives pieced the case together, they began to understand the psychology behind the crime. Grant wasn't driven by greed or rage. He was driven by delusion. In his mind, Sylvie wasn't a fantasy. She was his future. The family's attempts to separate him from her felt like betrayal. They were, in his mind, trying to destroy his only happiness. Psychologists later described Grant's condition as narcissistic delusion, a dependency on artificial affection so deep it blurred the line between love and obsession. He couldn't accept reality, so he destroyed it. Trial and conviction. The trial began in July 2019. The courtroom was packed. Reporters, locals, and curious strangers drawn to the horror of a man killing his family for a digital dream. Grant sat motionless, dressed neatly, his face blank. The prosecution painted him as cold and calculating. They described how he executed his family methodically, shooting his father first, then his mother, and finally his brother, the one person who had never given up on him. The defense argued mental illness. They said Grant had lost his sense of reality, that his obsession was a form of psychological captivity. But the evidence was impossible to ignore. His DNA, his gun residue, his digital footprint. The jury deliberated for less than 8 hours. They returned with a unanimous verdict: guilty on all counts. Grant Amato was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Aftermath. When the verdict was read, he didn't cry. He didn't speak. He didn't even blink. The only words he muttered came later, when asked if he felt remorse. "I loved my family," he said flatly. "Someone else must have done it." Even behind bars, Grant refused to admit what he'd done. To acknowledge his guilt would mean acknowledging that Sylvie, the woman he destroyed his life for, never loved him at all. Digital delusion. After the trial, investigators continued analyzing his digital trail. What they found was haunting. Thousands of hours of chats, messages, and payments. Endless transactions, each one a tiny illusion of intimacy. He called Sylvie "my love." He told her about his dreams. He promised her the world. She replied with carefully scripted affection, never breaking character, never revealing that to her. He was just one of hundreds of faceless clients. The contrast was chilling. On one side, a man sinking deeper into obsession. On the other, a performer doing her job, detached, transactional, unknowing of the destruction unfolding thousands of miles away. Legacy of tragedy. Today, The Amato house still stands. Silent, its windows dark, its driveway empty. Neighbors rarely speak of what happened. The tragedy left a wound too deep for words. 3 lives ended not because of hatred or greed, but because of a delusion, a fantasy that blurred the boundaries between love and loneliness. Grant Amato now spends his days in a Florida prison, where he remains isolated, emotionless, and alone. He still writes letters, though no one writes back. Sylvie never contacted him again. Reflection. The story of Grant Amato isn't just another true crime. It is a mirror held up to the modern world. A world where affection can be bought, where loneliness can be monetized, and where the need to feel seen can turn into something deadly. Grant wasn't born evil. He was lonely. He was searching for meaning in a digital maze that promised connection, but delivered emptiness. Every click, every message, pulled him deeper into that illusion. And when his family tried to pull him out, he mistook love for attack. The dark story's closing. When love becomes obsession, and loneliness turns into delusion, even the kindest home can become a crime scene. Grant Amato didn't kill for money. He didn't kill for hate. He killed for a dream that never existed. In the end, he traded his family for a fantasy, and in doing so, lost both forever.